good day to you, and welcome back. Welcome back to the Higher Grounds Podcast. Thank you for dropping by on this morning and joining Jonathan. We refer to him as Joe, and sometimes that gets confusing because we refer to my grandson as Joe. And so when I say, hey, Joe, neither one of them know which one I'm talking about. But Jonathan has joined us, the voice of reflections. And how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How about you?
Doing well.
You always are.
Yes, Wells.
Yes,
I'm
Wells,
doing plural.
Yes. Right.
I'm Wells plural. You just hanging in there,
Yes,
hair and a biscuit.
Yep, like bad toothache.
Bad toothache. That's right. Hey, we're fixing to. We are in the compound here at the Higher Grounds Podcast Studios, and located in the middle of nowhere. And if you get here, you'll have to have a GPS to find us. But if you find us within the next day or two, we probably will be rowing a boat. Have you heard that the water is fixing to give a deluge upon us?
It is coming.
That's what I've heard.
We already got a light rain outside with a good bit more forecasted to come. I've heard there's some people are getting over a foot in some places.
Well, we have forecast to get up to 15, 16 inches.
Yeah.
I'm hoping not. I'm hoping the weatherman lied again. Can't trust the weatherman,
No.
But I'm hoping he didn't lie and we get 30 inches,
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
But we're building a lake.
We are.
If we get enough water, we'll have our lake full by the weekend.
Just go ahead and fill her up. Just go.
Well, that's fine by me. It's on its way to being full. You enjoying some coffee, are you?
Oh, some good coffee now.
Yes, I am too. I spent part of the morning at the Cashua Coffee Roasters in Hartsville, South Carolina. Some of you have heard me mention Cashua from time to time. Mr. Luke and Miss Becky Hudson was in the roastery today with Luke's brother Joseph, who is the roaster there, and I got to view the operation and very clean. I mean, extremely clean. The only other roastery that I've been in that was as clean or cleaner was the Vienna Street in Dubuque, Iowa.
Right.
If you've never had the opportunity to go by a coffee roastery and look at the operation, it would amaze you. And in the Cabin Coffee Company, there in Blairsville, Georgia, they roast their beans in the shop, and so I was able to go in the Cabin Coffee Company roastery and watch them roast beans and get some coffee from them. But Cashua is tremendous coffee, and I think the first exposure I had to it was you bought me a bag two.
We did. We bought it from one of the local stores there.
Liquor stores.
One of the.
Did you say one of the liquor stores?
No, one of the local stores.
Local stores.
Yes. No.
It's my bad ear.
Sure.
It's my bad ear.
You see what kind of trouble he tries to get me into on the podcast.
Always.
So what now?
Always.
Every time I talk to you. But I say, one thing I love about it is a good cup of coffee, but they're also real local. And they like to deal with small local stores and the McLeods.
Yes.
You can get from there, just little general stores throughout our area. And also they're real good cup.
Now, Joseph was speaking to me today about the fact that they were at McLeod's. And then, have you ever visited the Midnight Rooster in Hartsville?
So.
The Midnight Rooster is up the street from the restaurant called Sam Kendall's. It's in the downtown district of Hartsville, South Carolina. And at the Midnight Rooster, that's the coffee that they brew and put out is the Cashua coffee. Mm-hmm. And they go down to Charleston, South Carolina, to the ports, and they bring the beans in from Honduras and different places down south of us,
right.
And the coffee's just tremendous.
One thing you say for sure, it's better than Starbucks.
Better than Starbucks. And in our humble opinion, as coffee connoisseurs and aficionados, it doesn't take much to get better than Starbucks.
No, not much.
I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to a preacher from out west, and he had been down in Honduras or Venezuela. He was down in one of those countries and was visiting a coffee farm. And as he was there, the coffee farm, he and his wife were the only ones there.
Right.
And the owner of the farm said, the lowest grade coffee we grow here is what Starbucks is buying and importing back into the U.S.
I remember you telling me about that.
And hey, we're interested in good coffee, the high-end coffee.
Stuff.
Yeah.
We like the stuff that smells like a skunk but tastes way better.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, I stepped outside somewhere the other day, and it was I smelled a smell, and I said, that's either a fine bag of coffee or somebody rolled a joint or a skunk has been through here. So,
there's no telling around this area.
That's exactly. It could be all three.
It could be all three
where we live
at the same time.
That's exactly right.
Oh, have
hey, what have you been into?
Oh, working around now that I've graduated and all working on the farm. And, of course, teen camp season and youth camp season is closing out now. So we've got all that. And probably.
Yeah, that's the last podcast we did.
Yes, sir.
On last week was dealing with the wrap-up.
Yes, sir.
And, of course, I think you've got one more.
There's probably I probably got one more semi
camp thing to go to.
It's more of a day camp, something like that, but I got that coming up in the future. And of course, at the time of this recording, in about a month or so, I'll probably be in a Bible college.
Yes, you will be.
So, excited to start that and all. And hopefully you'll be lenient on me. I'm hoping you're going to be scoring my papers, so.
Well, I would say some of them I will be. And I am excited about you coming on with greater frequency to help us around the table here at the podcast and then with the post-production work. And we've been tossing around ideas about going further forward with the podcast with different improvements, and we're looking forward to bringing you. I think we've always brought you a halfway decent product, but we're looking forward to bringing you even greater material and more professional product.
Right.
And so we're really going to be investing and looking into what God's going to do for us. I'm one of my mottos in life has been loving the Lord and living life. And it was the Apostle Paul, if I remember right, and I could be wrong about the reference here, but he said he's given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness.
I believe it's Paul, yes, sir.
And so not just godliness and not just the things of God, but also living life. And, we're serious about several things. Right. We're serious about our walk with the Lord. We're serious about holiness. We're serious about our Bible and living for the Lord. It's not just something we do; it's who we are.
Right.
But yet, at the same time, living where we live, we're not in the middle of some metropolis somewhere where all you can do is
play basketball in the street.
Play in the street and the hustle and bustle of a big city, which I absolutely have no affinity for whatsoever. We're in the middle of nowhere. And, a lot of our life is lived outside in the woods or on the water.
Right.
And we want to bring some of that to you as well and just see the adventure of living a Christian life, not just living as a Christian, but living a Christian life.
Right.
And so it's going to be good. I really am anticipating, looking forward.
And to make a quick reference where you say you're talking about enjoying life and all, I think it was in the book of Ecclesiastes where he said, be not righteous overmuch.
Yeah, that's right.
You look at all the old saints. Is there always room for us to improve and to be more spiritual in our lives?
No doubt.
No doubt about that. No doubt. But at the same time, God loves you enough that he said, I want you to enjoy me. I want you to serve me. I want you to be a picture of me. But I want you to enjoy this life. Be not righteous overmuch. But he said, I want you to enjoy this life. Don't be so spiritual at the point where you can't enjoy this world.
Right. And, and he gave like a two-sided coin. He said, be not overmuch wicked, be not overmuch righteous. Right. And basically he boils down to living a balanced life. And some people have trouble doing that. it would be good to relax and do that, enjoy that, live a balanced life with family and friends and with your work. I mean, I'm a worker. Everybody knows
Right.
80 at least 80 hours a week. I'm working up early and stay up fairly late and work, and I'm all about that. But at the same time, there's some living to be done, and at 58, I don't have much longer to do that in. Even if I live to be an older man, my physical abilities to get out and live as I have lived, tramping up and down the mountains and climbing trees and shooting animals and fishing rough waters, my ability to do that physically is
Right.
going to be hampered and hindered. It is now, to be honest with you,
Right.
to some degree. So what living we're going to get done, got to do it now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So looking forward to what we can bring you on the podcast.
Yes, sir.
We've been tossing some ideas back and forth. It's going to be great. Going to be great. Hey, so I forgot to start our timer a while ago, so I don't even know how long we've been going.
Yeah, I
but-
would just go for it. We'll
That's
get there
right.
eventually.
So I want to ask you a question. We were talking earlier, and I know that you and I banter back and forth and talk back and forth about Bible characters and such. And I asked you earlier today who your favorite Bible characters happen to be. And, you said, Liam, think about that. So you've been thinking all day, and I have been thinking as well. So what are your favorite Bible characters? We'll start with the Old Testament. Who's your favorite Old Testament Bible character?
In the Old Testament, there are a couple that stand out to me that I like a lot, but probably overall my favorite in the Old Testament would probably be Daniel.
And why?
And, well, just looking at the life of Daniel, there's so much that you could glean from the life of Daniel, reading through the book. And, of course, Daniel. And you preached a sermon sometime back at our church at the beginning of the year on Daniel. And that was kind of what really got me interested in looking at Daniel. I'm like, man, this is interesting right here. And I got into it and just look at him. I mean, he is a picture of what every Christian man, and for that case, woman ought to be.
Yes,
yeah. It's a picture of it. And to talk more about that sermon if you can remember about
this Daniel prospered was the sermon. And, the Bible speaks, that is the very statement that is used in the book of Daniel. It says, and this Daniel prospered. And I believe it was in chapter 6, if I'm not mistaken, of the book of Daniel, where he was serving under the Medo-Persian Empire. And Daniel was an unusual guy. He was multilingual. I don't know how many languages he could speak. He was taken into Babylonian captivity when he was just a lad of a boy, a teenager at the least.
Right.
And he was brought into captivity with a number of others, thousands really.
Right.
As they came into Babylonian captivity, we're told, that they were marched naked across the desert to get there, and then they were brought in and emasculated and, put into the schooling of Nebuchadnezzar for astronomy and astrology and different other, counsels that he required and desired in the kingdom. And Daniel, of course, standing for how he stood, prospered in that he was unwilling he was undaunted, in his stand. And he loved the Lord, and he served the Lord. And, what God did in Daniel's life and in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's life is fantastic. Unwavering in their conviction, yet gentlemanly in their stand.
You could say very well they had every excuse not to turn out right.
Yeah. I mean, their parents were no doubt killed, probably in their sight, to produce fear and awe in their little hearts. They were, naked to their shame, walking across the desert. History tells us they were treated poorly. And then they were thrust into an environment that, in their bitterness, they could have literally looked at God and been accusatory toward God, and then turned their back on God. But Daniel didn't. He evidently and obviously believed in the sovereignty of God, and that God had his hand in the whirlwind and in the storm, and that God was working in his life, and he did. He served four world leaders. He was a governor. He was a president. He was a counselor. The positions that Daniel held, very few people at all in world history, 6,000 years of world history, held the influential positions that Daniel held.
Right.
And it was all because of his stand with God in the face of all difficulties and problems.
And Daniel was a prime example that, your surroundings don't determine your outcome. And I think that's one of the reasons I love him so much, and I enjoy studying behind all these great heroes of faith because you look, we live in a day where no doubt we've had more concentrated darkness. The powers of the devil and the powers of sin and wickedness are working hard today than ever before. But you can look to history, to look to the Bible, to the heroes of the faith, people like Daniel, who, even though they were faced with so great an opposition, they turned out right. They served the Lord. Amen. They prospered for God, and they weren't going to let the world stand in their way.
And they didn't. And God blessed those men in an unbelievable. Now, God didn't take their adversities away, or their difficulties away. I mean, He still made them face them, which I think is a lesson for all of us to learn. Just because we're pleasing God does not mean we're not going to face situations we'd rather not face, or difficulties or oppositions. I mean, while we've been sitting at this table, one of the finest young men I know has just texted me asking for specific and special prayer because of adversities that have just popped up in his life that he's facing.
Right.
Hey, it happens to all of us, but remember Psalm 91, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty, and he that set, in the ending of the chapter, he that set his love on me, I will hold him up in those days of danger, and I will remove him from it, and I will pick. It doesn't mean it won't come, but I'm going to take care of him in it.
Right.
And he's a great one. What about New Testament?
New Testament, I think probably the Apostle Paul would probably be my favorite in the New Testament. And the reason...
most people would say Peter.
Yeah.
Why would you say Paul?
Well, I think I can relate to Paul more, not in the fact of being a
That's why people would say, that's why people would say, I'm more like Peter. I relate more to Peter because I'm such a doofus.
Well, see, I was going to, you interrupted me. I was going to say something about that. This is what he does to me all the time.
I know.
But so that actually brings back a good point. One of the reasons I think some of the most loved people in the Bible and some of the most hated people in the Bible are the people we relate to the most.
Yeah.
And so, like, you take the children of Israel in the Old Testament, one of the most hated group of people in the Bible. Everybody's always like, oh, they just sit there and complained all the time and nagged about, oh, God ain't good enough for this and that. And the reason I think so many times we give them such a hard time is because we see ourselves in them so much.
That's the truth.
And likewise, some of the people that we love the most in the Bible are the people we can relate to the most.
Yeah.
And Paul, I was saying, I can't relate to him in the fact of I'm not an apostle. I don't have this, great power to raise people from the dead or do any miracles or something like that. But as far as his salvation experience, and I know what you're going to say, no, I was not walking on the road and a light did not shine down from heaven before you even think about it. That did not happen.
Yeah.
But, Paul, growing up, Paul was very religious.
Yes.
He was brought up in the school of Gamaliel and knew what the word said. He knew the law of Moses, and he could probably quote much more scripture than you and me could ever.
No doubt.
And you look at that growing up, I've always grown up in church. I went to Bible school. I could quote the verses, and I mentioned it to you earlier. You got to get kicked out of it. I was going to these day camps and winning Christian Character Award. I wasn't even a Christian. I wasn't even saved. That might have had some bad judgment.
That a heathen can have Christian.
That a heathen can act like a Christian.
Yeah.
And so, I can kind of relate to Paul on that. And eventually what it came down to was Paul, he thought he was good. He even said, according to the law, I'm blameless. I'm blameless. Yeah. I'm guiltless. And, eventually it just took the light of God shining down on Paul to reveal to him who he was. And that's how it was for me. I was just an old sinner, lost in my sins, but Amen. I was religious. And one day the light of God shone down my heart, showed me that I was a sinner, and I got saved just like Paul did.
I'm going to tell you, if God's light doesn't shine on you and open your eyes, you won't get saved. Well, you won't see your need to be.
If you don't know you're lost, you'll never want to get saved.
That's right.
And if you don't know you have a disease, you'll never want a cure for it.
That's exactly right.
I mean, there's no doubt it has to be done. You have to realize.
Yes. I'm so glad for those two that you made mention of, and they're iconic, no doubt, in the scriptures. Mine is a little bit more obscure.
Mm-hmm. I think I know who you're going to say.
Who?
I can't remember his name, but I know who you're going to say.
I know, but I don't know. That's what he said.
I'm just going to let him remember it for me.
Yeah. So it was Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, sure it was. Yeah. Over
one of them Old Testament
names.
Yeah,
well, they're over there in 2 Samuel 23.
I always said they should have named him Bob.
Bob?
Yeah,
it'd been easier for you? Robert?
Yeah. 3-letter names and that such.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Yeah.
So I like him because he was such a warrior. He slew a lion in a pit in the day of snow. How would you like to be walking along the snow, just enjoying the snowflakes, and then all of a sudden your feet go out from under you and you fall in this hole and you say, "Man, how can I get out of there?" And then you turn around, there's a lion. You know, who can't like that story? And then he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. And then he slew an Egyptian. He had a big spear in his hand, and he took the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and slew him with his own spear. Who don't like that?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite characters.
Ultimately, what you're saying is you like him because you can relate to him, right?
I like violence.
Yeah. I knew you would say something like that.
No, but he was put over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, which were David's courier squad and David's hitman squad. Again, who don't like that? I wouldn't like the courier part, but the hitman squad, yeah. So, and then he served faithfully for 40 years. He had these little duties that most people wouldn't want to have, but he served them. It'd be like the junior boy Sunday school class. Who wants that duty?
Nobody.
It's like herding cats. And then you wind up doing it for 40 years faithfully. That's kind of what he was. And then when it came time for Solomon to take over, and Adonijah was calling, for men to turn on David, he did not call Benaiah because he was loyal. And if there's one thing that I view as probably being extremely high on my scale of your stock value, it is this business of loyalty. Right. Are you a loyal individual where you need to be? Loyal to your family, loyal to your Lord, loyal to your church, loyal to your wife. Loyalty is huge with me,
right.
And I even people I disagree with, if someone steps to the plate and they're very loyal to those individuals, I respect that. I can't help but respect that. I love loyalty, right. and Benaiah is the epitome of that. Yeah. And then he also really respected the house of God too. Right. Solomon told him, he said, "I want you to go find Joab and kill him." And he went to find Joab, and Joab was in the church on the altar and had grabbed a hold of the horns of the altar and was praying, And Benaiah says, "Okay, Joab, it's time to die. Come on outside. Let me go ahead and get this over with." And he said, "No, I'm not moving. I'm staying in the church house." Well, instead of killing him right there in the church, he went back to Solomon. And he said, "Listen, I respect you, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, but I respect God's house. He's on the altar at the church house. I'm not going to kill him there unless you tell me that's what I'm supposed to do." And he said, "Go back and kill him on the altar." And he did. He went back and run him through right there on the altar and drug his carcass out of the church house. And I don't know. I just like the story.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
No spiritual application, just great story.
Well, there is some spiritual application about respect for God's house and respect for authority. But he wound up being put into the room of Joab. In other words, he took the head of the army and did that in 40 years of peace.
Right.
And so, it's a great story.
I think, in referring back to what you said earlier, they didn't ask him when they tried to turn against David and all that.
Yeah.
I think you could rightfully say that Benaiah, I don't think I'd be wrong in making this application, Benaiah is the type of person that every pastor wants underneath them. When somebody tries to turn against them, they know not even to go against him because they know that man's loyal to his pastor. Yeah, everybody wants a
Benaiah. When I sat under my pastor, Brother Gary Neal, who's been on the podcast in years gone by, if he was having trouble at the church, anybody that had issue with my pastor, they did not come to me. They didn't come to me. And the reason they didn't come to me is because my loyalties for my pastor were very much pronounced.
Right.
People knew how I felt about my preacher. And so, you're not going to come talk to me about it. You're going to get in big trouble.
Right.
I remember one guy that tried that little sly business, and we cut him off. I mean, we were fellowshipping with him every week. I said, no more. And we cut him off. We ain't doing that. And their marriage is gone to pieces, and they're out of church and everything. And so I'm this loyalty business is big with me.
Right.
Yeah, I like in the New Testament. I have to like Peter. I mean, Peter, he misunderstood everything just about.
Right.
And he's swinging that sword and chopping them ears off of the servant of the high priest, Malchus. And he really thought he was doing right. And there have been a lot of times I've swung the sword from the pulpit.
Again, he can relate to
thinking I'm doing right, and the Lord's having to put somebody's ear back on,
right.
And I'm sure there have been times that in my life that I've denied the Lord, maybe not outright with my voice, but with my actions. He's definitely not been the Lord at times in my life. I haven't submitted to that lordship, and it's a lot like Paul. I mean, like Peter.
Yeah.
But he's got to be one of my favorites.
Right. Well, on that regard, you just mentioned that. Have you ever had one of those what they call rooster experiences with Peter, where the rooster crowed, and all of a sudden the realization came upon him? I've denied God.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's happened to me in chastening when the Lord started chastening me, or I remember a time when my heart was not right with God, and I was broken about it. And you're going to think this is stupid, but I mean, this is real. And I was very contrite about, having done wrong and having gotten my heart in such a cold condition, and I'm heavy burdened over it. And I'm riding down the road, and I'm way out in the middle of nowhere. And I said, Lord, I'm on this little road, single car road, and I said, I've never seen any deer here. I said, Lord, if you're hearing me, and if you could do me a favor, if you could just let me see a deer on this road. And I said, Lord, I don't mean anything to anybody else. I'm not suggesting anybody do this, but Lord, it would help me. And I had no more got them words out of my mouth than a doe and her fawn hopped across the road right in front of my car. And I just broke down and started crying. Yeah. And God had herded them deer along and got them to the edge of the road long before I ever made my prayer.
Right.
Because he knew I was going to need
He knows our needs before we ever pray about it.
Before we ever ask him. And he's interested.
Right.
There's a lot of things that God's done for me in my life. It showed me that he's God and he's Lord. And there's no way I've come too far. You can't convince me that he's not real and he doesn't care.
I think it was Vance Havner. I think he said, if some scientists could make me question my faith, I would get a new faith.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Hey, I've come too far to turn back now. Ain't no way. And the Higher Grounds podcast this week is brought to you by Affordable Septic Repair. Brother Matt Laney and his fine crew at Affordable Septic will do you a fine job. They are members here at the Galilee Baptist Church. I appreciate Brother Matt, and I appreciate his spirit and his heart for me and his heart for the church. Hey, thank you for tuning us in this week at the Old Higher Grounds podcast. And until next time, you, my friend, keep drinking that good coffee and keep pressing on the upward way. We'll see you next week.